we have a guest to tell us about the biggest Indian story since Hanuman. It's basically Hanuman with a laptop. Let's hear from Deshal Demel, Illuminati. So today we're going to talk about the biggest Indian issue since Hanuman. With us today is Deshal Demel, a serious economist and member of the Illuminati. He gets to read secret documents. So he's going to talk to us about a secret document. So what is a SEPA ETCA and why do they keep changing the name?
So SEPA is actually a very old agreement. I mean, it actually started negotiations maybe in 2003, soon after we had the free trade agreement between India and Sri Lanka. So I was involved in negotiations between 2005 and 2008. And what it does, it basically builds on the trade agreement that we have with India. So it expands from goods and it goes into investment and services as well. So it's a little bit more tricky than trading goods because it's a lot more straightforward.
So it's some trade agreement like NAFTA or GATT or whatever.
Pretty much, but it's really not as sophisticated as what you have in like advanced economies. Ours is relatively simple.
But given how many times India has messed with us in the past, why do we need this agreement? And do you not feel like Sri Lanka is awesome?
Sri Lanka is quite awesome in its own right, a lot more awesome than most places. But it's like this, right? I mean, Sri Lanka as a market is a population of 20 million. We have a market of 75 to 80 million US dollars, which is really not that large. As much as you'd like to think that, we have marvelous and stuff, we have a relatively small market. And if you want to attract kind of, serious investment and also for our own businesses to grow, you really need to tap into a larger market to be able to expand and to, play on a global scale.
So you're saying so this document isn't actually an agreement, right? It's a framework to agree upon.
Absolutely. So what it does is it creates, you're right. It creates an institutionalized framework within which you would trade. So we already have one for goods, right? To exchange goods, to import and export. This basically expands that. So if you put that in context, in Sri Lanka's economy, about 60% of it is services. But when you do not have services as part of your kind of trade agreement, then you're locking out a good almost 2/3 of your economy from the benefits of integration and.
I mean that all sounds reasonable, but you are part of the Illuminati,
yes,
and people are out there with pitchforks. So I want to read you some comments that people left on my blog. In general, compared to Sri Lanka, IT industry in India is low paid and overworked. What this will create is a cheap flow of relatively low to average skilled people who will drive down salaries here. So basically, our cheap Indian labor is going to come and take our software jobs.
So that's a very common misperception. Now, the common expectation is that there are going to be Indian barbers coming in, and I mean, that's a really unfair statement.
I've been to an Indian barber. They're better than Chinese barbers. They at least understand the Sri Lankan hair, but go on.
That's true, actually. I've been to an Indian barber as well, but he only cut my facial hair. I didn't do the rest of it, so I was a bit disappointed. Anyhow, that's not the point. The thing is, when you have an agreement on services, it's completely different to agreement in goods. So goods work in this thing called a negative list, right? So in trading goods, what happens is you would define certain items that you would not liberalize, and everything else gets opened up.
Okay, so we'd say everything but like pulse and ball.
Absolutely, right? Whereas for services, it's the opposite approach. You call it a positive list approach, and you would specify exactly what you would want to liberalize and to what extent, and everything else is closed.
So as far as the public statements, they've said that IT-enabled work and shipyards is going to be open. But why do we need Indian IT people? Are we not great at that?
We are pretty good at IT, but the thing is, I mean, it's like this, right? So when you have the flexibility that is granted through services agreements allows you to specify what exactly you want. So for example, even within IT, if we have several IT companies, if there is a certain shortage in certain segments of skills, then you can specify that, okay, we will allow Indian workers to come in with X such and such qualifications within such and such numbers, so you can put a limit.
Yeah, so like if they agree not to like pee on the street.
That kind, it really does give you a lot of flexibility. So it basically caters to our market as well, right? So from an industry perspective, there are plenty of guys who would want to do a certain business but might not have the skill capacities available locally, right? And in that case, you can still do that. You can go through the BOI. You can get workers from overseas, but it's a process, right? So this is basically an attempt to simplify that and to institutionalize it.
Okay, so this sounds not insane. This sounds like just liberalizing some trade and services, mainly IT. with rules that we can.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say mainly IT. Again, that was what was negotiated at that time. At that time, it was basically like, I mean, out of about 9 sectors, it was only in IT, in maritime services, and I think in one other segment that there were very, very limited commitments. And again, that was just basically. So what happened was that 3-year period I mentioned between 2005 and 2008. The Institute of Policy Studies, the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, and the Department of Commerce of the government spent a long time consulting with industry to understand what the requirements are, what their interests are, and what their concerns are.
Okay, but this time it seems like there's been no consultation because people are freaking out. And for example, why am I not allowed to read the document? We've actually leaked the document, but like, why are you not supposed to?
So that part I really disagree with. I think it's really important to have public consultation, and it should be out in the open. I mean, I think that will allay a lot of fears and a lot of misconceptions. And so I'm not too sure exactly why it's not been made public, but I think it should.
Okay, fine. So thank you for taking the time, Mr. Demel. So that was Dishal Demel, serious economist, Illuminati. We've leaked the document, so go ahead and read it at yamu.lk and decide for yourself. Not that your opinion matters that much anyway. Thank you.